and UNDP, as well as the Islamic Group for Development Bank, where 55 representatives from different Arab countries, in addition to experts and participants from the organizing entities. The objective of this meeting was a mixed objective. So theoretically, it was an opportunity for the parliamentarians to be introduced and get to meet the Sustainable Development Plan with all of its objectives, as well as indicators, and increasing awareness regarding that and raising awareness about all of these topics. And it was also an opportunity for the parliamentarians to discuss the role played by parliamentarians in this regard, and to specify the needs of the parliament, so that the Arab parliament, so that they are able to assume this role. In addition to, at the end of the meeting, there was a clarification of some messages that were issued, and through which these can be heard in the Arab Forum and in the other also international meeting in New York. The parliamentarians talked about three main issues. First, regardless of what role the parliamentarians had assumed based on the Sustainable Development Plan, they said that nevertheless, these parliamentarians believe that their role, according to most of the constitutions, is a role based on what the Constitution has provided them with in these countries, taking into consideration the legal reality and restrictions of every country. However, the legitimacy of their role is based on their real role according to the legal reality of every country. The second topic, the plan being a comprehensive one, of course, but the circumstances of each state will necessitate that the parliament come up with or list priorities according to the reality and according to economic, social, and political development and growth within every country. Third, what the Arab region is going through is not easy. They are exceptional circumstances, and the parliamentarians believe that any of the concerned stakeholders will not be able to assume this burden. So consequently, an internal discussion will play an important role. So there needs to be an internal discussion in order to assume this burden, because one stakeholder alone will not be able to go forward and implement the plan. That is why Parliament plays an important role, considering it's a platform to lead the societal discussion by opening the floor wide to all the concerned stakeholders to be present in the preparation of the plan, implementation, and follow-up as well. However, the parliamentarian role remains a very clear role in most of the Arab constitutions. First, regarding taking part in the plan, in the formulation of the plan, following it up, and monitoring it later on to make sure that all the concerned entities are implementing it in a correct manner. Second, regarding most parliaments, we know that the parliaments have the right to draft the public budgets, and that is why parliaments need to audit these budgets to make sure that they are harmonious, that the resources are available, that the necessary funds are also available based on the plan formulated in every country. And in the morning, we heard about financing, and we heard about the challenges that will be faced by most of the Arab countries in providing and making use of these resources. That is why the parliament needs to monitor or oversee the financial performance regarding the execution of the budget, so that there will be no public money overspending, just like what we saw in many of the other Arab countries. Something else that parliamentarians consider as essential regarding the future or the coming phase as pertaining to security and stability, as well as getting rid of the armed conflicts in the Arab region, because we know that if the situation continues as is, these internal conflicts will not end. And if we do have internal conflicts, we cannot really talk about development. Now, at the regional level, parliamentarians consider that by coming up with a network of parliamentarians for development in the Arab region, this network or this establishment will help in the participation of the Arab Forum for Sustainable Development, as well as an exchange of experiences and know-how in the field of the implementation of the 2030 agenda. And thus we consider that there will be annual meetings that will be convened to listen to the work of parliamentarians and what has been done in each of the Arab countries regarding coordination and preparation. As for the what is needed for, or the requests of the parliamentarians and parliaments, we believe that we need to look at these parliaments not only as parliaments, but as institutions. So in addition to the parliamentarians, we also need to deal with the political parties, political blocs, the civil servants, as well as the different administrations within the parliaments, to empower them and train them and improve their capacities to better help the parliamentarians in order to succeed in the formulation of the development plan. Now, of course, there should be a cooperation with the official entities, specifically the monitoring or auditing bodies, and in cooperation with representatives of the private sector, research studies, centers, universities, CSOs, NGOs, in order to provide all what is needed by the parliamentarians to follow up with this plan. Thank you. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you for abiding by the 5 minutes. And thank you for what you've said regarding the importance of the role of parliamentarians in the 2030 agenda. It is an essential role. The third speaker is Ms. Aurora Fghali. She is Director General of Water and Natural Resources in Lebanon, and she will talk about what has been done in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, participants, it is my pleasure on behalf of Minister of Water and Energy. So it is my honor to welcome you in Lebanon, that is hosting the Arab Forum for Sustainable Development. The Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, ESCWA, in partnership with the League of Arab States, has organized the regional preparatory meeting, Arab preparatory meeting on energy-related issues for the 2018 AFSD in March 2018 at the UN House here in Beirut, with the presence of the members of the Energy Committee, as well as representatives of financial institutions, representatives of civil society organizations, as well as other entities representing water resources and energy in the Arab region. And the main objective was to see eye to eye regarding water and energy in the Arab region, and to come up with options for policies through integrating the goals and targets of sustainable development in the national reports regarding the achievement and progress done. This is regarding the 7th goal relevant to energy. And we have come up with the following methods and to be heard, so that the Arab countries take that into consideration upon the preparation of the Arab Forum in New York in July 2018. What are the messages? This transformation moving towards sustainable energy, a priority to all the Arab economies through the improvement of the resources in order to improve the efficiency of energy to the utmost, and to limit the dependency on fossil fuel energy to bridge or to meet the needs in energy requirements. And there should be sustainable energy as well as an empowering tool to achieve all the different SDGs, and to give a specific concern to the linkages and nexus and regarding food security, poverty, education, health, job opportunities, climate change, transportation, refugees, and displacement. Now, the priorities, regional priorities, to develop the policies and the organizational frameworks in order to have a quick implementation, as, for example, the spread of renewable energy. and to allow an increase in the investments of the private sector in this regard. In addition to building the institutional capacity as well as local governance and communicating between financial institutions and the government as well as private sector, public sector, transparency, accountability, cross-sector cooperation and coordination, the civil societies, NGOs, improving cooperation and trade amongst the neighbors in this country, in this region, as well as moving towards clean energy technologies, network linkages amongst the different Arab countries, as well as the reinforcement of the different projects, like, for example, the joint electric projects, as well as integrating gender equality in the different policies, empowering the women, encouraging her towards entrepreneurship, as well as limiting poverty and improving health. And now, of course, meeting the needs of the refugees, the displaced, as well as the hosting communities whenever possible, and especially in areas damaged by natural disasters. Regarding the implementation tools, we need to develop the different renewable energy systems to have a sustainable development. We need to promote for investment looking at clean energy and benefiting from the funding, international funding, as well as giving special attention to men and women who are marginalized in remote areas as well as rural areas.
Disseminate technology and transfer it through the support of research and the harnessing of new technologies. Achieve this transfer also in the field of energy. Encourage joint projects in order to manufacture energy efficiency products and clean energy products locally to create more job opportunities. Reinforce cooperation between all entities in the Arab countries. Thirdly, build capacities through the reinforcement of national capacities by the decision makers in the sector of energy and all other pertaining energies such as water, food, and environment. Design projects to build capacities in the short, medium, and long term. Build projects in order to rehabilitate and build the capacities of technicians and professionals working in the field of designing and implementing solutions of clean energy and energy efficiency project. Establish projects for the young. Establish also projects for a private sector partnership. Create specialized observatories for water resources data in order to unify, treat data and indicators periodically by preparing energy observatories, because they are the ones that can assess what's happening in this regard in the country. Furthermore, prepare comparable data and establish new indicators that might reflect the nexus between water, food, and energy, as well as the investment in clean energy and all other forms of energy. Thank you. 5 minutes exactly. Thank you. Women always respect their time. You have all by the time allotted to you. Thank you, Mr. Bassel. You were the one that started this pathway, and the others followed suit. We highly greet the minister. We know he is highly engaged. That's why he is absent. And now, His Excellency Minister Hassan Janabi, Minister of Water Resources in the Republic of Iraq. Financial affairs will be better, but water resources are also important, Your Excellency. Thank you, Dr. Khawla. I am very happy to participate in this forum to give a presentation on the report of the preparatory meeting on water resources at the HLPF in 2018 and at this forum. I shall be reading also in order to abide by the time allotted to me. If I do not read, I will take up more than 5 minutes for sure. In the same format as I have previously mentioned, there are many key messages that were conveyed by this meeting. Priorities were identified for the provinces as well as implementation tools. The key messages that were promulgated by this meeting that was held on March 28, 29, 2018 reinforced the importance of water security to safeguard safety, security, education and livelihoods in the rural areas, and in order to have a joint effort in order to sustain water resources and to lessen the number of people who suffer from water scarcity, mostly the most vulnerable and most marginalized segments of society. It was important not to politicize also water resources. They have to be protected during political conflicts and political strife and armed conflicts, away from any punishment. Any approach relying on the integration of water resources assists in all efforts exerted to deal with the scarcity of water resources in order to achieve water security in the Arab region. The participants also agreed upon the importance of sustainability of water resources and the availability and easy access of water resources at a lower cost by everyone, considering that water resources and sanitary services are one of the basic rights of the human rights. Therefore, all efforts in order to integrate gender equality within all policies in relation to management of water resources. Everyone also agreed that the reinforcement of international cooperation and the national cohesion, as well as transfer of technology, financing and investment, as well as the capacity building in the Arab region, are all factors in order to help in the process of sustainable development in relation to water resources. Decision makers can also harness sustainable development by integrating water resources in all the national policies and by having the necessary instruments to evaluate water resources, including water accountability. As for the national or regional priorities, in order to have a clean water resources and sanitary services for all and to render all of these services accessible by all, in this framework we have to strive to achieve water security at the level of the household, society, and as well as the subnational, national and regional levels amongst countries. There are 4 priorities that were addressed. Priority 1. The importance to reinforce the integrated management of water resources in order to better deal with water scarcity. Priority 2. The importance of reinforcing cooperation in the field of mutual water resources, and our region of the world has many joint water resources between member states and with other non-Arab neighboring countries. In this framework, it is of utmost importance to notice that the implementation of SDGs require the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestine and the Arab countries, because this occupation hampers people from using their own water resources. Furthermore, the regional cooperation is essential to protect the joint water resources and to protect water resources from any political unrest. Therefore, there must be mutual benefits to take also collective measures in order to stop any conflict or arising conflict between neighboring countries according to international laws and bilateral, regional and international instruments that some countries are signatories to. Priority 3. Considering water resources as a main factor to adjust to climate change and to mitigate the risks of natural catastrophes or disasters. The national plans must build capacities for adaptation and mitigation, as well as management of migration, also to fight other natural disasters such as flood and severe drought. Priority 4, provide water resources to all by further bolstering the water resources infrastructure. Many efforts must be exerted in order to rebuild the infrastructure and to provide the water resources in order to expand their scope so that no one will be left behind. Therefore, a priority must be assigned to the reconstruction of the water resource infrastructure that were deteriorated thanks to terrorism and armed conflicts, as well as aggression. As for the implementation tools of what was agreed on, the integrated management of water resources is definitely instrumental in order to achieve the Agenda 2030 through a number of tools, including first, international cooperation. Secondly, national cohesion and coordination between all sectors. Thirdly, technology transfer. Fourthly, financing and investment. Fifthly, the capacity building process. And if I still have one more minute, I would like to broach the issue of international cooperation through the reinforcement of all political frameworks and programs in relation to water resources and the management of joint water resources in line with the international law and all pertaining instruments in order to reach a common denominator in the management of water resources and a better way to deal with the scarcity of water resources. Therefore, data must be monitored and must be exchanged amid all member states. As for the national cohesion and the coordination between all sectors through the encouragement of methodologies based on the complete participation of stakeholders on all levels and through the reinforcement of all relationship for sustainable development, mostly that in relation to cohesion or correlation, between water resources, food, employment, and climate change. As for the transfer of technology, it can be done through the development of cutting-edge technology and the best ways in order to better manage the water resources and also to find other non-traditional water resources such as water harvest and the artificial replenishing of aquifers. There should also be strategies for recovering the cost in the field of water resources and in the sanitary services while taking into account the capacity of the poor segments to incur these costs. Fourthly, it was important to bolster the institutional capacities in order to design and use cutting-edge instruments such as the capacity to attract financing and build capacities of all those working in the management of water basins, as well as designing water policies in line with the international law pertaining to water resources to stop conflicts. Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellency Hassan Janabi, Minister of Water Resources, which are far more important than financial resources or sources, mostly in our region of the world. Thank you very much. Now, the speaker that will take the floor now, Mr. Zaghloul Mustawa Samhan, Director General of Planning of the Authority of the Quality of Environment in Palestine. We would like to greet Her Excellency Minister Adala, who wanted to be with us, but unfortunately she was unable to attend. Thank you, Mrs. Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, allow me to convey the greetings of Her Excellency Minister Adala Atira, who wished to be amongst us here today, but unfortunately for personal reasons she was unable to travel. The recommendations of the meeting that I shall tackle now is a preparatory meeting, a regional preparatory meeting on matters of environment and water resources for the Arab Forum for Sustainable Development, which was held in Cairo at the HQ of the League of Arab States in coordination from ESQA, UN Environment and ESQA. With the representation of many Arab organizations and international organizations. And these Arab organizations were affiliated to the Council of Ministers of Water Resources. I shall also read fastly my speech. I will read to you the recommendations of this meeting, and I'll break down these recommendations into three parts. As for the general messages that were conveyed, they were as follows. Ascertain that the end of the occupation and the restoration of peace and security in the Arab region are the cornerstone and the backbone for a better sustainable development and sustainable environment, mostly in the regions that suffer from continuous armed conflicts. Secondly, it was important to reascertain that the welfare of the Arab citizens are at the core of any sustainable process, and there should be sustainable production, there should be fighting for desertification and land degradation, as well as the preservation of biodiversity and fight climate change. We should all do that thanks to a holistic approach that takes into consideration the integration and inclusiveness of all policies that will bolster the complete implementation of objectives 12 and 15 from Agenda 2030. Reascertain the principal role that biodiversity plays in having a sustainable development plan by 2030 and its impact on the environment protection and alleviation of poverty, while reassuring the importance of the Aichi objectives, because they have a positive impact on water security, on water resources, and resilience to combat climate change, natural disasters, and the creation of new job opportunities. Reassert the importance of disseminating the concept of healthy cities thanks to new urban planning by encouraging sustainable and clean transportation systems and the sustainable use of natural resources, as well as the safe and sound management of garbage and other tools as well. As for the regional priorities, they were broken down into three as follows. Firstly, the better use of natural resources in a sustainable way and shift away from the traditional usage that depletes the non-renewable natural resources. Therefore, we can lessen the negative impact on the environment and we can guarantee future generations. It was important to sensitize in partnership with all stakeholder organizations on all levels, mostly with the sectors of education and the mass media. It was important to reascertain the priorities that were emphasized in the Arab Agreement in terms of energy, garbage, rural development, poverty alleviation, and sustainable tourism, as well as sustainable livelihoods. Therefore, it is important to call for an implementation plan that will be in line with SDGs and that will have a monitoring and follow-up process. Reinforce the Arab cooperation thanks to a common vision that will reascertain the respect of the three Rio environmental agreements in order to fight any degradation or further degradation of the environment. Fourthly, it was important to fight desertification and to reinforce biodiversity. 5, take into consideration the continuous and highly efficient urban planning that is politically and environmentally sound, while taking into account what is happening in the new cities to have also a good balance in development between rural areas and the new cities. Rectify all misusages. As for the tools for implementation, we mention the reinforcement of capacities and finding innovative funding tools in order to lessen pollution, land degradation, the loss of biodiversity, as well as unsustainable patterns of production and consumption. Furthermore, building capacity is instrumental in order to better correlate between the education outcomes and the policies. In line with SDG 17, in order to reinforce partnerships, it is important to call upon the funding agencies to abide by their financial commitments in relation to environmental affairs for the Arab states, mostly the least developed Arab countries that fall under occupation and that are also affected by armed conflicts. Reasserting the importance of developing legislative frameworks in order to lift financial and non-financial obstacles to change patterns towards a more sustainable consumption pattern. It was also important to reinforce dialogue and exchange of successful experiences between all stakeholders in urban planning and fight desertification as well as land degradation in order to formulate joint visions that will better contribute in the implementation of sustainable development in the Arab region. Finally, the active participation with the private sector and the civil society organizations and all other stakeholders. Thank you.
شكرا سيد زغلول مصطفى سم.
Thank you, Mr. Zaghlul Mustafa Samhan from Palestine. Thank you for your presentation. The last speaker is our colleague Ziad Abdus Samad, who will summarize the last meeting that was held just before this forum with the civil society organizations. It was the regional meeting for CSOs on sustainable development, and he had come from Brussels early today. Thank you, Dr. Khawla. In my turn, I will review the most important outcomes of the preparatory meeting at the level of CSOs that was held on March 22 and on April 23rd in Beirut. We have many solid recommendations that I will not be able to talk about in their totality, but we have a final document that is deemed as an analytical document for the challenges of sustainable development in the Arab region. And the recommendations are in line with the most important challenges in the majority of sectors. We have also an array of messages conveyed by the CSOs to the Arab Forum for Sustainable Development. And these messages are inspired from the final document, and they encompass or they aggregate the most important recommendations. There is one third document, which is an additional effort that the civil society is trying to contribute with by trying to have a package for regional targets and indicators to monitor these targets. I shall try not to read. I hope you can give me a couple more minutes. Otherwise, I will have to summarize these points expeditiously. If I give you more time than the others, says the chair, it might seem like a small favor, an extra favor to the civil society. I believe we do deserve that, says Mr. Ziad. These messages amount to 12 messages. And they speak of the priority of achieving peace and security and maintaining the territoriality of the Lebanese soil in line with the political declaration promulgated by the United Nations that link between the provisions of the requirements for development and their correlation with peace and security and the unity of the land. Secondly, it was important to provide protection and services for refugees in the host countries in order to provide their safe return to their homeland, if possible, or to resettle them in third countries. So this was the issue of refugees that ranks first on the list of priorities of the Arab countries. And this is a challenge that might hamper all developmental efforts, not only in countries of conflict, but also in neighboring countries and other nearby countries. The third message is in relation to the national ownership of policies and development programs. Therefore, it is very important to respect the policy space for the policy making, including economic and social policies as one important component in development. We need to establish a criteria that will regulate this issue. We know that in light of the cooperation for development, we have many political measures that are imposed, and therefore this space is important for policy. 4. Adopt a new development system that relies on the approach of a legal or rights-based approach. It also relies on what was discussed in this forum, i.e., transform from rent economies or resource investment based economies into real economies, i.e. productive economies, mostly in value added sectors that can yield revenues, while adopting policies in order to redistribute the wealth so that we can avert any possibility of marginalization and inequality and injustice. Adopt the integrated social security systems on the platform of any social protection that also include refugees and migrant workers. So the social protection does not only target residents but all those who live on this ground. 5, or rather 6, adopt integrated integrity approaches that take into account good governance, whilst not forgetting that we do not only need to merely fight spending and squandering and bribery, and include all sectors, including the main pillars of the state, such as the executive, the judicial, the civil society, the mass media, as well as the private sector. It is also important to regulate the relationship between all of these different sectors and stakeholders that will rely on the participatory approach, as well as accountability and transparency and disclosure. 7, it is important to work on dealing with the cultural bases against women. The issue of discrimination against women is no longer a rights approach that has to do with discrimination or violence against women, but it is furthermore related to an entrenched mindset, to a patriarchal society within relationships that call for exclusion against all marginalized segments headed by women. Therefore, we need to retaliate against these cultural mindsets. 8, we need to provide an enabling environment for CSOs. If we want to have a civil society that is an active partner in the development process, we need to provide the enabling environment, a legislative environment, but also an environment that might provide access to data, information, freedom of access and opinion, and to all other matters that will enable the civil society to play an instrumental role. Create an Arab fund for sustainable development, for human sustainable development, and imposing some regional taxes on the use of natural resources, as well as the adoption, as a 10th point, to a platform that relies on the human rights that were consecrated by international laws, mainly for persons with disabilities and special needs. 11, it is important to respect the right of the state to have sovereignty over its natural resources. The last message, which is the 12th message, stipulates the importance of the private sector, and if we deem that the private sector is a strong partner in the development process, therefore we need to adopt the rights-based criteria for accountability vis-a-vis the private sector, because it is the international path seeking to have an international agreement on the private sector and businesses. There is one further concrete recommendation that is pertaining to the follow-up on previous recommendations stipulated by the preparatory meeting of Doha and the last meeting that was held, in order to prepare a mini package of indicators according to national priorities and regional priorities, while taking into account the capacity of Arab states to provide the necessary indicators. We have spoken of many indicators that are specific to the Arab region that will help in localizing the Arab region, followed by another recommendation that speaks of the organization of an expert meeting in order to achieve this path. The civil society is called upon the implementation of this recommendation, and therefore he will be servicing this path in order to achieve this recommendation. Going forward, we have started proposing a preliminary draft that needs further scrutiny and verification, but it's a work of experts that require further work in order to agree upon a number of targets and objectives, as well as indicators that our region is in dire need of to embark upon with the sustainable development process. Finally, the meeting that was held in Beirut has established one main recommendation that revolves around the creation of an Arab platform for the civil society on the issues of sustainable development. A group of regional networks representing different sectors called for the creation of this platform, and these organizations worked in the field of women, persons with disabilities, syndicates, and so forth. And in this preparatory meeting, we hope that by the organization of the future forum, we will have an Arab platform on sustainable development that will accompany the work of ESCWA and all other Arab efforts and organizations in this regard, and will follow up on the recommendations of the civil society and the regional and national plans. Thank you, Mr. Ziad Abd Samad. Before I conclude, allow me to clarify that all of these recommendations will be part of an annex to the original document that will be promulgated by the end of this forum. And these recommendations have been discussed and they will be available to you. Today, they will be added to the original document within the report that shall be submitted to the HLPF, High Level Political Forum, to be held in New York in July 2018. So all of that will be annexed to the report, which is the special session following this one. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the panelists, Mr. Basil Ayoubi, Mr. Azmi Shaibi, Mrs. Aurore Fghali, His Excellency Minister Hassan Janabi, Mr. Zaghloul Hassan Mustafa, and Mr. Ziad Abdul Samad. Thank you very much, dear panelists. As I have previously mentioned, all of these reports are available, and we look forward to the Forum of the Civil Society for Sustainable Development. Thank you.